Okay, well, we might get started then. So first of all, thanks everyone for coming for tonight's Petals Up session. As you would have seen, tonight's focus is on the Duke of Edinburgh Award, and tonight we're joined by Sarah from the Office of Sport, who's going to take us through the Duke of Edinburgh Award and what it's all about, how dragon boat clubs can get involved, and we'll do a bit of Q&A in the end. So if that's all for now, I might just pass it over to Sarah. Thanks, Sarah.
Great, thank you for having me. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I am presenting on the land of the Camaragal people from the Eora Nation, otherwise known as North Sydney. As we are all at different locations for today's meeting, I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land where you are located and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I would like to thank everyone for making the time to come here tonight. I understand what it's like to be a club volunteer. I'm a club volunteer myself, so I know most of you have spent, the day working or with carers responsibilities or both, and now you've carved out some time at 6 p.m. To do more volunteer work. So I hope I can make the evening worthwhile for you. I'm going to be going through what actually is the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award, explaining the Duke for Sport partnership that Dragon Boats New South Wales has signed on to with us, the role of an assessor, which is essentially what's required of a club to be involved. So I'll go through that in a bit more detail. And then if you like the idea of some of the things I've speak about tonight, how you can get involved as well. And then there'll be lots of time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions as I'm presenting, please just hold them till the end and then we'll be able to get through them. And there's definitely no silly questions. So I'd be happy to answer anything you might have. So what exactly is the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award, or the Duke of Ed as we refer to it in Australia? So it's a youth development program. It's global. It's recognised in more than 130 countries. And it's for young people aged 14 to 24 to explore their full potential. And perhaps we might have some award holders on the line, or some of your family members have done the award before. Maybe you've been an assessor. If that's the case, I'm sure everyone would really love to hear about your experience at the end when we get to the questions. So essentially, the Duke of Ed is a framework. So unlike lots of other programs where every young person does the exact same thing, the Duke of Ed has a lots of flexibility for the young person to choose exactly what they want to do. So what it has in common is that every young person has to be physically active. They have to volunteer in their community. They learn a skill. And then they also go on an adventurous journey. So if you have heard of the Duke of Ed before, this is probably the section you might be most familiar with, which is like the hiking, camping, sleeping under canvas, and is definitely a highlight for most of our participants. There's 3 levels of the award, and each gets increasingly harder, with the most prestigious level being gold. So for the bronze award, the quickest you can do that is 6 months. And you essentially need to do 13 hours for all of what we refer to as the regular sections. So that's the service, physical, rec and skills. And then there's some journeys as well. And when you get to the gold level, there's a 5th element, a gold residential project as well. One of the core elements of the award is that it needs to be a regular commitment. And what we say by that is you need to be doing your hours either 1 hour per week, 2 hours per fortnight, or 4 hours every 4 weeks. Now, that's not to say there can't be differences within the sections. So for instance, what a young person might choose to do for their service, it might make more sense that 4 hours every 4 weeks, they go and do their service. Meanwhile, for their physical rec, maybe they're doing that 1 hour every week. But once they commit to what they're going to do, they sort of need to stick for that for the duration of their time. The benefits to our participants who do the award is it's a fun way for them to learn outside their classroom, experience a sense of adventure, meet new people, have a personal challenge. For many of our participants, some of the activities they were already doing beforehand. So it's a really great way that they can be recognised for those extracurricular activities. And it also is great to gain employability skills and make their resume stand out. So as I mentioned, it is recognised in 130 countries. So, if you want to go overseas, which touch wood, it might be safer to do so soon. They might not know the high school or university that you went to, but if you say you've done your Duke of Ed, it's that transferable skills. There's also a number of universities across Australia that offer bonus adjustment factor points, which is additional, which is basically extra ATAR points for doing the award. So in New South Wales, that's Macquarie Uni, and they recognise it for silver and gold, and UNSW Sydney, and they just recognise it for gold. So Dragon Boats New South Wales have signed up to the Duke for Sport partnership, and basically what that means is it's a free partnership that connects sporting clubs and organisations with participants completing their award. So basically, we found there's a really great synergy between the regular sections of the award, so volunteering, skill and physical rec, and sporting clubs as well. So by Dragon Boats signing up, it's a really great way for you guys to be involved. So each club doesn't also need to sign this agreement. Your SSO has signed it, and you are now all get to be a part of it if you so choose. There are about 14,000 young people who sign up for the Duke of Ed just in New South Wales alone every year. So by being involved in Duke for Sport, it's a way that you can hopefully help attract new volunteers and new players, retain existing young players and volunteers, and also provide additional value to those to your young members. So develop their teamwork, their goal setting, perseverance, and leadership skills. Also, we know that a lot of young people drop out of organised sport at around that 14-year age mark, and that's our most common age for our Duke of Ed participants. So the earliest you can start it is 14 years, and so it's that really great synergy between the two. Now, we've worked with Dragon Boats New South Wales to come up with a few ideas for each section. This is not to say that you couldn't do something different, but just to get you thinking about how Dragon Boats might be able to work with the award. So for voluntary service, perhaps a participant could be an official, they could be a coach, they could help you with your website, with your social media. Do you need someone to take photos for you? Do you need someone to take videos to promote your club? Skills, they could be an official, they could be a coach, perhaps they're on your committee. Do you need a youth advisory committee to help get more young people involved? Could they learn how to prepare for meetings, how to take the meeting minutes? And also event management. I know that you guys do a number of really great events throughout the year, and I know a lot goes into that. And events is usually something that a lot of young people really want to get into or know more about. And you really need a lot of that sort of on-the-job experience. So perhaps their skills could be event management. And for physical recreation, that's really the section that's the easiest to think about. So they could count their training, they could count their competing hours, and any off-water training. So I'd really encourage you guys after this meeting to have a think about where are the gaps within your club that you might need more help with. I've never met a sporting club that doesn't need more volunteers or couldn't use with more hands on deck. So have a think about what you need, and basically if it's giving back to your club in some way, or if the young person's going to learn a new skill, then they can count it for their award. Now, if I was you guys and I was sitting here on behalf of the club that I'm involved with, which is a hockey club, I'd be thinking, that's really nice, but what do I have to do to actually get involved? And am I going to need to put on more volunteers just to run this? Because, nobody has the time for that. But luckily, hopefully I can put your minds at ease that this won't be a burden for your club to take on. Essentially, what's required of a club, if a young person comes to you guys and says, I'm doing my Duke of Ed, say through their school, I'd really love to give back to the club in some way and do my service here. Can you help me? Essentially, you just need someone at the club to be their assessor. So this is someone who's suitably skilled, qualified or experienced. They must hold a working with children check. That's very important for our child safe requirements, and they can't be a relative of that young person. And then essentially all they need to do is chat with that young person about what is it they want to get out of working with your club, and help them set a SMART goal for the time that they're going to be with you. Unless the activity that they're doing is particularly dangerous and requires adult supervision, the assessor does not need to be with the participant for every hour that they're doing. So there's absolutely no requirement that someone from your club must be with that young person, 4 hours every 4 weeks. They just need to check in every now and then. How are you going? Do you need any help? And then at the end of their time, they sign off on their activities and they do what's known as an assessor report. Now, I wanted to give you just an example of what an assessor report looks like so you understand that it's not some big long page. You don't have to mark anything, check anything off. It's basically just a nice little paragraph to the participant about their involvement. So you can see here, Lily was doing netball for her physical rec, and her coach has basically done a nice paragraph about how at the start she was only able to play one position because she needed to work on her fitness. She did that. Now she feels a lot more comfortable playing with her in other positions. I also should have mentioned at the beginning of this talk that all these slides, they'll be available to you afterwards. So I'll send that through and you guys will be able to get a copy. The other thing that I would probably be thinking if I was you guys is, okay, there's 14,000 young people doing the award in New South Wales, but where are they, and are any of them actually near me? So luckily, Ramsey did send through the clubs that had registered for today's session. So I won't spend too long on all of these, but essentially I want you to know that after this meeting, there will be a slide in this deck where you can have a look. I've done a bit of a map that I can also send through. So we have an interactive map where you can see where all our award centres are, and essentially an award centre is just an organisation that offers the Duke of Ed, most of which are schools, but we also have sporting clubs, charities, a few businesses offer the Duke of Ed as well. So after this presentation, you'll be able to go in and see, okay, this is where my club is, this is where the award centres are. I've also sort of put maybe how many do it in your local government area, so you can get an idea of actually there are some Duke of Ed participants around near us, some of your clubs as well. There's literally thousands of Duke of Ed participants right on your doorstep that you might be able to tap into. And by Dragon Boats New South Wales signing up to this agreement, if you need more volunteers, I can send it out to the participants in your area and say, Pinnacle Dragon Boat Club needs some more volunteers. They have adults who are happy to be your assessor. Would you be interested? And I can also put you in touch with the award leaders. So hopefully you can form a really great relationship with them because they're mostly teachers and they do this each year, and they find it really helpful once they find an activity where they know that the club's really going to be involved. They're not going to have to chase them for their working with children checks. Usually they'll send participants there year on year, particularly if there's someone who's not too sure about what they should do for each section. So you can have a look at that afterwards. And then how to be involved, what's actually required. So basically it's about communicating, touching base with our award centres and signing a volunteer code of conduct. So the first thing I would do is talk to your existing membership base. If you have youth members, I know we had a club registered that was all youth members. I know we have a real range on the call tonight, and let them know, hey, is anyone doing their Duke of Ed? Because I'd be happy to be your assessor. Let's talk about how you can do your service and skills with us. Beyond that, have a think about the other opportunities that you have within your club. And then you can send that through to Ramsey, and he can send that through to me. And then basically, we can send that out. So we do a participant newsletter every term. So we could do a really nice story in there, do the photos, but we can also just put you in touch straight away via email with the award centres in your area to touch base. And then the volunteer code of conduct. So as I mentioned, the assessor needs to have a valid working with children check, which I'm sure all of you at the clubs who are working with young people will already have because it's a requirement of your organisation. So you would just need to sign our volunteer code of conduct. It's just a 2-pager that basically takes you through the requirements of being an assessor, which I spoke about before. So by signing that volunteer code of conduct, then you're sort of on that award centre's assessor list. And the good news is, say you might have 5 participants and they're all doing their Duke of Ed and they're all doing it at your local high school. You only need to sign one volunteer code of conduct. You don't need to keep signing it for every participant. Each award centre just needs to have one copy. Now I know I've run through that relatively quickly, but I wanted to make sure I sort of got to the point quickly, so I didn't use up too much of your time, and we had enough time, to really go through some questions now at the end. So if anybody has any questions, or perhaps Ramsey, if there's anything you wanted to talk about in terms of why Dragon Boats have signed up to this agreement, which is, with the New South Wales office for Duke of Ed, which is situated within the New South Wales Office of Sport, we can also talk about that as well.
Yeah, just before if anyone had any questions, that'd be good. I guess from Dragon Boats New South Wales perspective, this is actually something that was an idea of the club. So I think Dragon DSA over just across the road from me in Rhodes, they actually were pushing for it for quite a while. I believe they had a couple of young members that were interested in the award. And then, as Mary said, Mary from Zodiac, she's mentioned that she's has quite a few young people that have also done the award, and she's been the assessor for that. So for us, it was kind of natural that once we had the time to explore that avenue, and it's really good that we're signed up now, because I think it's a really great way for us to promote the award and all the good thing it does, and also for us, we get to get more young people in the sport, which is something that we kind of really all want. All right. So did anyone have any questions for Sarah? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Jane does.
I had a question, Ramsey. It's Jane from Pendragons. Thank you very much, Sarah. That was fantastic. It's sort of a question for Ramsey in a way. Obviously, with a lot of our clubs, we've got quite a lot of senior members. I think this is a great initiative to try and bring, or I suppose, engage with young people in our area to get them involved in Dragon Boat and understand about it in various ways. I know a bit about it because my daughter did go through this herself, so I thought it was a really awesome initiative. I think it would be great if we did take people into our club and we were working through them in any of the facets. At the moment, where we've seen we can mix up teams for racing, if that was something that they wanted to do, it would be really good if we could put them in the boat with us, because half the time what happens is they get to know the people in the club. There might be, say there's 2 or 3, it would be fantastic if there's opportunity for them to finish off their engagement, I suppose, or weekly, whatever it is, the regular time they put in with being able to attend regattas. And that's the challenge we find with a lot of young people as well when they do come along to our club.
So you're talking about someone signing up for the long term, or is it just a short term, like they might only attend like maybe a regatta or 2?
Yeah, even the short term. So say we had somebody come along for their bronze, it's a 10-week engagement, and during that time there's a couple of regattas. It would be great if they were doing their weekly training and then they could attend a regatta with the team that they were training with.
Okay. Yep, no, happy to take that on board and look what we can do for that.
Ramsey, with the Dragon Pass, they'd at least be able to get 1 regatta in through the 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's true. So just to, I think most of the people on the call would know about it, but just to inform Sarah as well, we actually just launched fairly recently what we're calling Dragon Pass, which is basically a full month's trial of the sport, free of charge. And part of that is you can attend a regatta as well during that month. So that might be a good opportunity if someone wants to do an award, and depending on, I guess, how much they have to do. If it's from a participation perspective, maybe doing that full month, both training in a regatta or 2 in there might be good for them.
Thank you.
Right, Mary, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, Sarah, I just had a question. As I said, I've been an assessor. I've been doing it for the last 10 years as kids come through. It hasn't necessarily been every year, but we've had quite a number of kids do it. I'm a teacher by background, so I was already aware. But I was wondering, with the code of conduct, I've signed more than one over the years because the students I've worked with come from multiple different schools. Is there a time frame that code of conduct lasts for? Should I be, as kids come, checking if they've come from the same school? Does it last?
It will last as long as your working with children check is valid. So I think is it 3 years? It's 3 to 5 years. When your working with children check needs to be redone, then you might need to provide a new one. But as long as your working with children check is still valid, you don't need to sign a new one every year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Did anyone else have any other questions for Sarah?
And I just with the and this might be for you, Ramsey. You know, if we, as I've mentioned to you, I've been thinking about trying to encourage the kids to get involved in officials and do some shadowing and things like that. But I just wanted to check with Sarah, if they're doing the voluntary basis, is that, I know there's the number of hours of I've done it more in the fitness and skill, like in the recreation and skill area, learning to steer a boat and things like that. But if they were doing the officialing, the opportunities to try and experience learning to be an official is done at regattas, which is, you know, it's like they might go for a full day or a half day, but it might be only once a month. Is that enough for the hours? Like, is it better for them to be doing it like shorter spurts over a period of time, or if they're doing a day, does that get their hours to where it needs to be?
Yeah, so I think if it's something that's a little bit more irregular, the best thing for them to do would be the 4 hours every 4 weeks option. And what you could possibly do is, you know, you might have the regatta and they can count 4 hours. And then if there's not another one in the next 4 weeks, perhaps you host a Zoom call and you just, you know, go through a few of the tips and tricks and refreshers on maybe what they learnt from that, what they could get out of the next one. So as long as they're doing the sort of 4 hours every 4 weeks, that will count towards it. Unfortunately, they can't sort of, you know, do a full day and bank it and carry it across for 2 to 3 months. But, you know, they don't necessarily have to be at the regatta every time for them to be learning, basically. Like, could they be reviewing footage from the regatta and thinking about maybe what they could have done differently or what went really well?
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
And Sarah, I'm assuming that means we can those guys can do a mix of activities, right? That we saw the list of activities for. It doesn't just have to be just officiating or just paddling. It can be any of those.
Yeah, they can do a mix. So particularly for bronze, we do encourage that for each section, they try to maybe just pick one thing for the 13 weeks, but they can do up to 3 within their section, you know, so maybe let's say for service, maybe you need help redoing your website. And that takes the young person 8 weeks, and then, you know, they still need the remaining 5 weeks. Then perhaps they help by giving back, you know, by taking some photos or being an official. So they can do different sections. They just can't really do a different thing each week for the section. It does need to be for at least a few chunks for that week. For that
right, gotcha. Probably one more question from me. In terms of them completing their hours, an example I was thinking of, if we had, say, Mary had someone that was with Zodiacs and doing the participation hours, and then they wanted to do something different, so maybe the officiating, and they came and kind of were working for us on an event, would that be okay, or does it have to be contained within kind of one club, one organisation?
No, if the club's happy for them to you know, work with other clubs or organisations, that's definitely fine. They might just need to have a think about who the assessor is going to be, so the adult that will be with them or helping them for the most amount of time. But no, definitely. And when you're setting the SMART goal for the participants, you know, you can, while it does need to be specific, you don't need to be as specific as helping like the Zodiac Club do this. It'd just be like giving back to the Dragon Boats New South Wales community. And then, you know, it doesn't really matter who they're with, as long as, like, if they are children working with adults, making sure that those adults have the correct child safe requirements.
Yep, gotcha, cool.
Can I ask a question, Ramsey? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So one of the things that I have done in the past when I've had young people who paddle with us regularly and use the recreation, the fitness side of it, because they paddle every week, and then they come and want to do a skill. And one of the skills that I've done with some young people is learning to steer, which takes, you have to qualify 20 hours of steering experience, a bit like learning to drive a car. But I was under the impression they couldn't do both in the same. Are they allowed to use both of those, or is it better for me to do what I've done in the past and say choose one and then choose something else as your other element? Or are we allowed to say to them, yes, you can use, because they paddle as well as learn to steer, basically. So
yeah. So they can do multiple, but they can't really do multiple at one time. So for instance, if they were doing the paddle for like 4 weeks and then they were doing the steering for another 4 weeks after that, or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, that's fine. The other thing they can do is, you know, and this works really well for parents, if the parents drop them down at the club and they can do their service hours and their skill hours and their physical rec hours all in one day, as long as they're not sort of double dipping on one hour, they can sort of do a lot of hours in one go. So if they were doing 4 hours a fortnight for their skill and their physical rec, you could be down at the club for 8 hours and tick off both those two for the month. So they can do multiple. It's just more about that not double dipping in the sort of one go. Yeah.
So like we have like 3 sessions a week, and they might paddle 1 session and steer 2 sessions in building their hours. So the paddle 2 is 2 hours a week toward, or we do, they paddle 4 hours of the week and then 2 hours are toward their steering accreditation. But I've sort of discouraged that in the past and said, well, choose one for now. Are you going to apply your steering one, or are you going to apply your paddling one? But it appears that they could do both because they're not overlapping at the.
Yeah, and you know, particularly it does, you know, if there's physical exertion, so while they might be learning a skill, but if there's physical exertion, that could be the physical part, and then the other section that they're doing could be towards the skill. So there really is quite a lot of, we try to make as much flexibility within the award as possible. So, you know, they do need to pick a goal, they do need to be committed, but what that's going to be, there is a lot of room to move, and making it realistic that they do want to get in and learn as much as possible and be involved in as many ways as possible.
Yeah. Sarah, also just for the other people's notice, I've also had people who are brand new to dragon boating do learning to paddle as a skill, because it's a completely new sport. Instead of their recreation.
Yes. Yeah, so as long as they make sure they're just really clear in the goal, that it's not about, for instance, trying to become fitter so they can paddle for longer. It's about actually learning how to, you know, paddle and maintain themselves in the boat, then that would be a skill. There really is a lot of room to move, and I think particularly within a sport like yours, it's very exciting. It's something different that a lot of young people might not have done. We really try to encourage them for their Duke of Ed to think outside the box and try something new. And ideally, we do encourage the participants as well to be the ones that come to you guys. And so, you know, obviously we're aware that sometimes it is parents, but we do try to communicate to our participants that, you know, no, you should be the one to approach the adult at the club and say, I want to be involved, I want to help out. What can I do? What can you help me with? What can my goal be? And that's a really great learning experience for them as well, you know, particularly approaching something new that they haven't done. And that's really what the Duke of Ed's about, pushing them outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah, sounds very good. Okay, well, if that's it for now, I'm sure Sarah's probably happy to take questions later on, either through me or her contact details are on the screen now if you do come up with any questions later. Otherwise, we might leave it there. As I mentioned before, we've recorded tonight's session and Sarah's going to flick through the presentation to me. So we'll make sure that's up on our website and social media probably by the end of the week.
Yeah, and particularly any, you know, I think some of the questions you might not have until a participant actually comes to you and says, can I do this? You can get in touch with our office at any time. We take calls and emails, you know, all day, every day, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So please reach out, and particularly anything about communications and trying to reach our database of people, reach out to me, reach out to Ramsey, and we can do that. And just lastly, something I didn't mention is young people can sign up for the Duke of Ed at any time of the year. They have until they're 25 to complete, but we do find, because a lot of people do their Duke of Ed with school, we do tend to get most of our registrations coming up like Feb and March. So if you do have opportunities within your club, and I know your season might be winding down a bit by April, but there's always things that need to be done, particularly for service. So now's a really good time for you guys to have a think where particularly might you need more volunteers. and send that through to us, because I can communicate that out when, you know, we're getting our thousands and thousands of participants registering and they're all trying to find an activity. And we do find service is the one they struggle with the most. And I think a lot of young people, they think, oh, I could work at an op shop, I could fundraise for a charity, but I'm trying really hard to communicate to them that giving back to a sport is service, and that's volunteering. And there's a lot that needs to be done, as we all know. So any opportunities that you have, please send them through, and we'd be more than happy to share them with our participants.
Yep, cool, awesome. All right, well, thanks again, Sarah. Your time's very much appreciated, and yeah, we'll see everyone at the next Paddles Up session.
Thanks
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Ramsey.
Thank you.